I was in a 24-hour 7-Eleven in a quiet residential district of Tokyo last week, around 3 a.m. The store was a masterpiece of Japanese precision shelves, stocked with surgical accuracy, floors polished to a mirror shine, but there was a haunting emptiness to it. Not a single employee was in sight. Just a glowing self-checkout kiosk and a small, polite sign apologizing for the temporary labor adjustments. Outside, the streets were silent, illuminated by the soft blue light of vending machines, perfectly safe and perfectly still. Later that morning, I grabbed coffee with a local salaryman who had spent 30 years in the logistics sector. He was visibly exhausted, complaining about the manpower desert that was slowing down deliveries across the country. But when I brought up the government's recent decision to cap foreign labor at 1.23 million, a number far below what most economists say is needed to keep the lights on, his reaction wasn't what I expected. He didn't call for more visas. Instead, he leaned in and pointed toward the window at a group of primary school students walking to school entirely unescorted. In London or Paris, could they do that? He asked. To him, the 1.23 million figure wasn't a recruitment failure or a policy blunder. It was a defensive perimeter. He spoke about it with a sense of grim satisfaction, as if the labor shortage was a price he was more than willing to pay to keep the social friction of the outside world at bay. He'd rather wait 3 days for a package than see the fundamental Japanness of his neighborhood change. That stark contradiction, a nation desperate for hands but terrified of the people they belong to, is the defining tension of the Takaichi administration's 2026 roadmap. While the West sees a demographic house on fire, Japan is performing a cold, calculated experiment in defensive realism. They aren't trying to win the global race for talent. They are trying to see if a civilization can survive by replacing its missing people with robots and Galapagos logic, prioritizing cultural purity over the raw pursuit of GDP. It leads to a chilling question. Is Japan's civilization siege a slow-motion suicide or the most sophisticated survival strategy of the 21st century?
That image you just described, the perfectly organized but totally empty convenience store, it's just the perfect way to frame what we're looking at today.
It felt like the future, but a very quiet one.
Exactly. Because what we're analyzing here is this radical living experiment. It's a country that seems to be actively trying to decouple a high quality of life from, endless GDP growth.
Which flies in the face of pretty much every assumption the rest of the G7 nations hold.
It really does. And so the mission for this deep dive is to unpack that, to look at the core pillars of this strategic contraction. We want to explore how Japan is managing to hold on to these incredibly high living standards and this deep social cohesion.
All while facing 3 decades of a flat economy and the most extreme demographic decline in the modern world.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
Because the fundamental contradiction here is that Japan is, it seems, intentionally leveraging technological evolution, we're talking robotics, automation, as a direct replacement for, biological reproduction.
Because they're not willing to embrace mass immigration to fill the gaps.
Precisely. So technology becomes the only other path. The whole national project is to see if they can preserve a traditional social order inside of a post-growth economic reality. And that's really what we need to dive into first.
Okay, so let's start right there with the reality that's forcing all of this. The demographic cliff. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to call Japan the global harbinger state for this, is it?
Not at all. They are living the future that most of Europe and North America are just now starting to really worry about.
Yeah.
And the metrics, they're just extreme on 2 fronts, the scale and the speed.
Let's talk about the scale first.
So in terms of sheer scale, Japan has the highest proportion of elderly citizens on the planet. By 2022, it was nearly 30%.
Almost 1 in 3 people.
Exactly. 29.1% to be precise. So if you just, picture a street with 10 random people in Japan, 3 of them are receiving a pension. That's the reality.
And that's a staggering concentration of age. But as you said, it's the speed of that shift that really created the shockwave.
That's the critical part. It took Japan only 24 years for the percentage of people over 65 to double, to go from 7% of the population to over 14%. Just 24 years.
And how does that compare to, say, Europe?
Well, for that exact same demographic shift, it took France 115 years. Italy took 61. So Japan is aging nearly 5 times faster than France did.
Which means their national institutions
Had no time to adapt.
Exactly.
Their pension systems, their healthcare infrastructure, all of it. They were all designed during the post-war boom.
for a young, growing country.
Right. And they were given just 2 decades to completely retool for an aging, shrinking one. It wasn't a gradual slope, it was a cliff.
And that rapid shift means a smaller and smaller group of working-age people has to support a bigger and bigger group of older people.
That's the structural imbalance, and it's measured by the age dependency ratio. That ratio was already at 40% back in 2014.
So 10 workers supporting 4 dependents.
Yes, and the projections show it nearly doubling to almost 80% by 2060. The strain that puts on everything, taxes, productivity, social services, it's immense. It's pushing the theoretical limits of what a modern economy can actually sustain.
And you don't even need to look at the economic charts to feel it. There are these really visceral markers of the change everywhere.
Like the diaper statistic.
Right. The fact that sales of adult diapers officially surpassed sales of baby diapers all the way back in 2014, it's such a quiet but powerful symbol of the whole national story.
And you see it physically transforming the landscape too.
Yeah.
Especially in the countryside.
The school closures.
Around 400 primary and secondary schools are closing every single year, just, gone. Because there are no children left to attend them in those districts.
And what happens to those buildings? I mean, all that empty infrastructure.
They're immediately repurposed. A lot of them are turned into elder care centers or community hubs for seniors. Yeah. You're literally watching the infrastructure for youth become the infrastructure for the elderly almost overnight.
So even with this high quality of life, the costs of this degrowth are very real. The government is consciously choosing to tolerate them.
Oh, absolutely. The contraction is managed, but it's not painless. The labor shortages are severe. Over half of all Japanese companies are affected.
And the national debt is just staggering.
It's at 246% of GDP. I mean, a level that would cause a panic in almost any other country. It's only manageable because it's mostly held internally by domestic bondholders and the Bank of Japan.
But maybe the biggest social cost, the human cost, is that phenomenon of kotokushi.
Solitary death. It's such a profound marker of social isolation in what is, paradoxically, one of the safest societies on Earth.
The numbers are just heartbreaking.
They are. In the first half of 2024 alone, the bodies of nearly 4,000 elderly people over 65 were found a month or more after they had died. Alone.
And this happens at the same time as this hollowing out of rural Japan.
Right. The young people continue to migrate to the big hubs, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, which just accelerates the decline in the countryside. Some experts are projecting that nearly half of Japan's municipalities could just, effectively disappear by 2040.
So faced with this existential level of crisis, the government makes a very deliberate choice. Which brings us back to that defensive perimeter the salaryman talked about.
A very calculated choice. They have largely rejected the idea of mass or so-called replacement migration.
And the numbers they would need are huge, right?
Just to put it in perspective, the UN projected that Japan would need about 609,000 immigrants every single year just to keep its workforce at the same size it was in 1995.
And they're saying no to that.
They're saying no, and they're grounding that decision in a philosophy. It leans heavily on communitarianism, this idea that preserving national identity, culture, and social harmony is more important than raw economic gain.
They believe a large, rapid influx of people would create what they call social friction.
Right, and that's paired with a kind of statist economic utilitarianism. The government's view is that they have to minimize the long-term costs of permanent settlement, things like integration services and Social Security.
So the policy ends up favoring temporary, high-skilled visas, but it's very resistant to large-scale permanent immigration, the kind you see in Canada or Australia.
Exactly. And the outcome of that is that the low-skilled labor they desperately need gets pushed into these unofficial, often problematic categories.
You mean things like the technical intern trainee program?
Precisely. That program and the reliance on part-time student workers, they act as a sort of backdoor for labor. But it's a door that doesn't offer a path to permanent residency or real social mobility.
It maintains the status quo. It keeps the Japanness intact, but at a real cost.
It's the cost of that defensive perimeter. They're deliberately choosing to accept economic drag and policy friction in one area to maintain cultural purity in another.
Which means if you refuse to import people, you have no choice but to develop technology to replace them. And that takes us to our next section. Automation as a national survival strategy.
This is where Japan's hand was forced, and they've responded in a way that plays to their historical strengths. This isn't just about R&D, it's about aggressive, nationwide deployment of these solutions.
And it's important we get the terminology right here. We need to distinguish between automation and augmentation. They sound similar, but they're very different strategies.
Absolutely. Automation, that's the classic idea. It's AI completely replacing a human worker. Think of a fully driverless truck.
No one in the cab.
Right. Augmentation, on the other hand, is about keeping the human in the loop. It's technology that enhances what a person can already do. And this is critical because augmentation is often much, much closer to being commercially ready.
You can make a good construction worker great today. You don't have to wait for a perfect robot to be invented in 10 years.
Exactly. And the government is not just hoping this happens. They're building the digital infrastructure to make it a reality.
Things like the National Comprehensive Digital Lifeline Development Plan.
It's a huge commitment. That plan is specifically creating autonomous driving service support roads. They're using advanced 5G to do it.
Not just any 5G, right? It has to be a specific kind.
It has to be 5G SA standalone and local 5G. You need that dedicated, low-latency, secure communication for a self-driving vehicle to make split-second decisions. It's like building a digital railway track for these vehicles to run on.
So let's look at where this is needed most urgently. Logistics and transportation. That manpower desert is a real crisis.
It's an existential crisis for the sector. The average age for a commercial truck driver is almost 49. They're working over 200 hours a month. It's a tough job young people just don't want.
Which explains the incredibly aggressive government timeline. Level 4 autonomous driving on expressways by 2025.
It is aggressive, but they're moving fast. They've already installed dedicated autonomous vehicle lanes on the Shintame Expressway, which is the main artery between Tokyo and Nagoya. That was in November 2024.
But full level 4, a completely driverless truck, is still a huge technical challenge. So what's the bridge to get there? What's the augmentation solution?
Truck convoys, or platooning. They've been testing this rigorously. You have one-man truck in the lead, followed by 2 or 3 driverless trucks that are digitally tethered to it.
That's brilliant. One driver is now doing the work of 3 or 4.
It immediately triples the productivity of the workforce you already have. And as a side benefit, it cuts fuel emissions because the trucks are drafting so closely together. It's the perfect interim solution.
And this need for automation is even more desperate in rural areas, isn't it? Where depopulation is literally killing public bus routes.
Yes, and it's isolating the elderly who remain. That's why you're seeing tests of level 4 self-driving buses on public roads in places like Kamisha Hojo in Hokkaido. This isn't a luxury. It's a lifeline to keep basic public services running.
And it's not just the highways. It's coming all the way to the front door.
The last mile. The Road Traffic Act was changed in April 2023, specifically to allow autonomous delivery robots on public roads. You're already seeing companies like Uber Eats using them in Tokyo and Osaka. The entire supply chain is being re-engineered.
It's so comprehensive. Let's shift to another sector in crisis. Construction. With more than a third of workers over 55, they can't afford to wait for a new generation.
And this might be the best example of Japan's strategy of embedding skill into the machine itself. Look at what the company Komatsu is doing with its ICT construction equipment.
These are excavators and bulldozers with advanced GPS.
Right. And what that does is it dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. A task that used to require a decade of experience, like carving a hillside at a perfect angle, can now be done by a less experienced operator who just pushes a semi-auto button.
So the machine contains the decades of knowledge.
The skill is in the software. It standardizes the quality of the work at an incredibly high level, regardless of who's in the cab.
And they're also pursuing full automation for the most dangerous jobs.
Yes. The construction firm Obayashi partnered with SRI in Silicon Valley, the same group that developed Siri, to create autonomous hauling robots for construction sites.
And the big advantage there is not just safety.
It's efficiency. These robots can move materials around the site overnight. That eliminates the huge traffic jams you get every morning on a high-rise site, with workers just waiting in line for materials. It makes the human workers far more productive during their shifts.
And they're even augmenting the workers' bodies directly.
With wearable robotics. Obayashi also partnered with a company called Seismic for powered clothing. It's basically an exoskeleton you wear like clothes that has micro motors to help with lifting.
So it provides power to your back and hips.
Up to 30 watts of power. It reduces fatigue and injury, and it's a critical tool for keeping an aging manual labor force on the job, whether it's in construction or in an elder care facility.
So it's this incredible mosaic of technology. But for a culture like Japan to embrace all this so completely, it can't just be about efficiency. It has to connect to something deeper.
And that takes us to the third, and maybe the most important, pillar of this whole strategy: the cultural anchor. the Shokunin Ethos.
Which is much more than just the word craftsman, right?
Oh, it's a whole philosophy.
Yeah.
Shokunin is this relentless spiritual devotion to perfecting your craft. It demands absolute attention to detail, uncompromising quality. It's a pursuit that's often valued more than profit itself.
And this has deep historical roots.
Very deep. In the old social hierarchy, the Shokunin were ranked above merchants. This created a core societal value around the quality of production.
And the industrial version of that is Monozukuri.
Making things. It's the philosophy that gave us Kaizen, the zero-defect mentality. It's why Japanese cars and electronics built that global reputation for quality.
So when they're faced with a labor shortage, the cultural logic isn't to accept lower quality.
The logic is to industrialize perfection even further. Technology isn't just a labor-saving device. It's the natural extension of the Shokunin spirit. The thinking is, if a human can't achieve zero defects because of fatigue, then our commitment to perfection demands we build a machine that can.
That completely reframes automation. It's not about cutting costs, it's about upholding a standard. We can see this in agriculture, where the crisis is just as severe. The average farmer is almost 70 years old.
And again, you see industrial precision being applied to solve it. Komatsu, the same company, used its ICT bulldozer technology for wet rice farming.
To flatten the paddies perfectly.
Almost perfectly using GPS. And the reason that's so important is that a perfectly flat paddy allows you to plant rice directly from seed, which is much less labor-intensive than transplanting seedlings. It's a 40% cost saving.
It's Monozukuri applied to farming. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. Japanese companies are actively looking for global expertise.
Yes. The agricultural company Kubota set up an innovation center in Silicon Valley. They're investing in U.S. startups that are building harvesting robots and AI for monitoring crop health. They're blending their hardware expertise with American software strength.
And we see the same precision ethos in healthcare, especially elder care, where the costs are just exploding.
The bottleneck there is a shortage of specialists. Japan has tons of MRI and CT scanners, among the highest per capita in the world, but they don't have enough radiologists and pathologists to read all the images.
So how do you solve that?
With digitalization. A startup called MNES is using cloud platforms to share medical images instantly. This allows a small number of top radiologists in, say, Tokyo to provide remote diagnoses for hospitals all over the country.
And that actually has a fascinating side effect on the labor market for doctors.
A critical one.
Yeah.
A big reason for the shortage is that many female physicians leave the profession after having children because of the rigid, long hours of hospital culture.
But with a remote platform,
they can keep working. These highly trained doctors, who often want to live in cities with good schools for their kids, can now practice with flexible hours from home. Technology is creating a work-life balance that the traditional culture couldn't.
Beyond diagnostics, they're even using physical robots for social and emotional support.
Right. And these are not just for efficiency. Take Pero, the therapeutic robot seal. It's used in dementia care to reduce stress. It has sensors and learns to respond to a patient's touch and voice.
And then there's the much more abstract one, the telenoid.
It's a very minimalistic, human-like android. The design is meant to transmit the presence of a distant person. A family member can call in and operate it, speak through it, and studies show that dementia patients often accept it, allowing them to connect with loved ones who can't be there physically.
But for any of this to work, the whole system has to be connected. The hospitals, the nursing homes, the care managers.
And that's where services like the Canamic Network come in. It's an IT platform that coordinates all those different caregivers, moving away from paper and faxes to a centralized cloud system. It's all about making home-based care more efficient to reduce the reliance on expensive hospital beds.
And this precision mindset goes down to the smallest details, like helping the elderly with swallowing difficulties.
Dysphagia. It's a huge health risk. Normally, staff in a nursing home would add thickeners to drinks by hand, which is time-consuming and inconsistent. Now you're seeing specialized vending machines that automate the whole process with perfect precision. It's industrial problem solving for a very specific demographic need.
It's an incredible technological response, but the justification for all of this, for accepting the economic pain, comes back to what that salaryman said. It's the price you pay for safety and social cohesion.
We really have to look at the public safety data because it is a true global anomaly. The murder rate in Japan is 0.2 per 100,000 people.
Which is the lowest in the OECD.
It's 30 times lower than the rate in the United States. And the crucial thing to understand is that this isn't tied to the economy.
What do you mean?
In most Western countries, when unemployment goes up, so does violent crime. In Japan, that link is broken. The murder rate has been declining steadily since World War II, and it is completely unresponsive to economic ups and downs.
And the geography of crime is different too. In the U.S., violence is often concentrated in specific hotspots tied to poverty.
In Japan, crime is spread evenly across the landscape. The poorest district in Osaka, Nishinari, has a murder rate that's statistically the same as the wealthiest districts. Poverty and violence are decoupled.
And there's also very little repeat offending in serious crimes.
Recidivism for murder is almost non-existent, less than 0.3%. It means there aren't organized, repetitive criminal groups driving the homicide rate.
So how do they achieve this? What's the structural mechanism for this hyper-safety?
It comes down to the Koban system, the local police box. Tokyo alone has over 1,000 of them.
And these aren't just mini-stations for reacting to crime.
Not at all. The officers are deeply integrated into the community. They conduct neighborhood censuses so they know who lives where. They do counseling. They resolve local disputes. It's all about prevention.
What's incredible is the efficiency. Tokyo has 62% fewer police officers per capita than New York City and spends less per resident on policing.
The efficiency comes from prevention. By spreading their resources evenly and integrating them into the community, they stop small problems from becoming big ones. It's cheaper to prevent a crime than to investigate one.
And this model also dramatically reduces state violence.
The contrast is stark. In 2018, there were a total of 7 killings by all public servants in Japan. In the US, it's around 1,000 police killings every year. The Japanese system is designed to de-escalate.
But this safe collectivist society creates a really interesting paradox when it comes to trust.
The parochial trust paradox. It's completely counterintuitive. Sociological studies show that people in Japan actually have lower generalized trust in strangers than people in the more individualistic United States.
So how can a society be so safe if no one trusts strangers?
Because they have incredibly high parochial trust. They trust their in-group, their neighbors, their colleagues, their local shopkeepers to an extreme degree. The whole system is built on low social mobility and deep long-term relationships.
So you minimize the risk of being cheated by only dealing with people you know.
Exactly. You accept the opportunity cost. Maybe you could get a slightly better price from a new supplier, but you stick with the one you know because the relationship is safe and predictable.
You trade market flexibility for social cohesion.
That is the fundamental trade-off at the heart of modern Japan. They are structurally protecting that core mechanism of safety and in-group loyalty, even if it means lower economic growth. And that is the social premium they are willing to pay to preserve their culture.
So when we pull all these threads together, what we're seeing is a nation that has deliberately stepped off the treadmill of endless growth. They're managing their decline by optimizing internally, not by opening up.
Japan's defensive realism is an incredibly sophisticated survival strategy. They have successfully used their deep cultural values, that Shokunin and Monozukuri ethos, to drive the internal technological solutions they need. This allows them to minimize the social friction they fear from the outside world.
They're accepting economic stagnation as the price for maintaining that social cohesion.
It's a high price, but one they seem willing to pay.
This whole experiment really proves that stability and a high quality of life can exist in a post-growth world. Japan is showing us that prosperity might be defined less by growth charts and more by the social integrity a civilization is determined to protect. It suggests the ultimate measure of success in the century may not be maximum output, but maximum durability.